Hi everyone, welcome to the Webical, the Importance of Onboarding. Thank you all for joining today. Today we're going to talk about why onboarding is so important, and to start with, actually, what is onboarding? My name is Roy. I'm head of product at Appical. I've been working on a onboarding solution for the past 7 years. So I helped out quite a lot of clients of ours creating a good onboarding. Walked into many challenges, pitfalls, and so on. So today I'd like to share my knowledge and my experience doing that. So actually the first question is, what is onboarding? The typical image that people have of onboarding is that it's a boring orientation where new hires fill out a bunch of paperwork and they watch a PowerPoint presentation on the first day in a class, talk together with other new hires. But we think that in reality, onboarding is much more. It's actually a process where new hires are introduced to the company, to the culture, the values, and most importantly, maybe the people. So socialization is a big, powerful element. It's also a way of training people, getting them productive much quicker as well. If you don't do the onboarding well, and I think last but not least, it has a big impact on the way people behave later on when they are actually productive. So making people feel comfortable in their new role is essential, and they need to understand what their role is, how it impacts the business, and learn what kind of behavior is expected from them. We at Appical think you can create the ultimate onboarding by combining knowledge, experience, and a platform. What does that mean? Well, we think that if you put these 3 elements together, you can let new hires make them feel welcome, teach them what they need to do to be productive, giving them the right knowledge that they need to do their work. We think you need to offer them an experience. It's not all about transferring knowledge in a boring way. It needs to be fun, so it's easy to memorize. It's also part of a new journey. You're starting as a human being. So better make it an experience, because it's also part of the employer branding. And we think you should definitely use a platform. That's easy for us to say because we are a technology company. But we think if you leverage technology in the right way, and that's nowadays quite easy to do, you can make it more accessible and more engaging. So that's absolutely a quick win. Like I mentioned, we've been helping lots of clients. We work with big, small, well-known and unknown companies. Helping these companies out gave us quite some insights on what actually plays on a day-to-day basis at all kinds of firms. Smaller companies tend to think about what kind of info they send. Bigger companies have a lot of info they send, so they have completely the opposite challenge, getting things simple and easy to understand. But for us, it gives us a great insight for all the crowds we handle. So what does a employee journey look like? For us, one of the key elements of a good onboarding is timing. Trying to cram everything into one day is quite an easy thing to do. You just put a couple of people in the room, maybe put in front 8 or 9 presenters from different departments, let them tell the new hires everything they need to know. But in our experience, not a lot of that information will stick. Learning takes time. You can't send over all your company know-how in a day or in a short document in a PDF or PowerPoint or anything like that. We found out that simply doesn't work out. So rather than immediately pushing big projects onto a new hire, a lot of information, we think you need to create the fundamentals, the groundworks for success of new hires by creating a 30, 60, a 90, or even a 1-year plan, dividing the responsibilities and the actions into different steps, making them complexer by the day, and let new hires focus on specific skills and projects to let them increase their productivity over time. We feel that the right onboarding plan will continue the work you did during the recruitment, the candidate phase. Most companies put in a lot of effort and money creating nice websites, beautiful vacancies, and it's such a waste if a person comes in, it's all one big disappointment. So as you can see on the screen, The start is usually for us when the person sees the vacancy for the first time. He goes into the candidate process, and maybe you even want to make the pre-signing already a big element of the onboarding. So letting people learn about the values, the culture before they actually sign the document. But the actual onboarding starts usually, let's say, around 25 days before the first day, where the pre-boarding, as we call it, starts. Up into orientation, which is the first day, getting to know all the folks that you're going to work with, until the onboarding, which is actually day one and more. So you're starting to get productive. You want to have clarification about your role. What are my tasks, my responsibilities? Who am I going to work with on a day-to-day basis? What are the other departments I need to communicate with? And the last that we start to see more and more is actually switching roles. So you have to change your most critical knowledge. Your skill set needs to change. Maybe you want to transfer knowledge from the work you currently did to another new colleague who is rolling in. So that's also a major element. If we're taking a look at why good onboarding is so important, you can come up with a lot of data. If you just search Google on good onboarding data, you'll find lots of researches, and they're increasing every year because onboarding is becoming a more important element in HR. We think you just can't stop wooing a candidate once they join your company. It's a continuous process, and according to TalentWise, 22% of the employees leave an organization within the 45 days. That's quite a shocking number. It means that almost a quarter of the people you acquire leave within a month and a half. So I think it's easy to imagine the amount of money that is lost there. It's also known that companies with an engaging onboarding program retained over 90% of their first-year workers. So on the other hand, if you do something about it, the chance that they will stick is quite high. New hires who went through a well-structured onboarding program were 69% more likely to remain at the company up to 3 years. So it's not only a first-year benefit, but it's actually a benefit that sticks around for quite a couple of years. So that makes the ROI even much bigger. Aberdeen, who is a big researcher in the HR field, noticed that an efficient onboarding process led to 60% year-on-year improvement in revenue. So it doesn't only contribute to the new hire itself, but as a company in a whole, and even the revenue. So even if somebody's not directly related to the sales department, it could be in customer service or marketing. The onboarding of all new hires equally benefits to the improvements in revenue. And last but definitely not least, 63% year-over-year improvement in customer satisfaction. So having happy employees in place that are productive and that are well-informed actually have shown to lead to improvement in customer happiness, which is a far-fetched but quite an interesting relationship. While we visit our customers, we show this data. Naturally, they agree because it's data. But when we ask them how they're doing, they usually say, well, we're doing great. We have an onboarding day in place. We send out information before the first day. But that is typically what you get when you ask the person who's responsible for this job, and that's the person we're talking to. So when we start looking into the data, we actually go on to the right image, which is what they're actually doing. They're just sending over stacks and stacks of information, lots of paperwork, repetitive paperwork. So a lot of companies are not pre-populating, for example, fields digitally. So new hire ends up filling out their names like 10 times in a row in a different document, 15 times their social security number, 3 times their bank account, which is quite a repetitive process, and it's quite boring for the new hire, and it's not the experience that you promised at the gate when they entered. So that's definitely something you have to realize and look into the mirror, like how are we actually doing their onboarding. Another interesting fact, we know that a colleague who leaves your company costs you 30,000 euros on average. Different researchers show different results. This is the number we tend to handle. There's recruitment costs involved, time spent by your people, talking to the candidate, setting up the vacancy, replacing somebody, training. So it's quite a lot of money that is easily won, and definitely something to take in mind when you're setting up your onboarding. If we look at big companies, we find some interesting processes that they've set up to increase their onboarding efficiency. A nice example that I like to use is the one of Google. We know that it's no secret that Google is one of the best companies in the world in analyzing data. So the folks at the Google Analytics team start monitoring the data about new hires, and they found that there's quite an easy way to accelerate the time to productivity with up to 25%. And how that did is actually quite surprising. Jay just started sending out a reminder to the manager of the new hire, so not to the new hire himself or herself, but to the manager on the Sunday before the new hire starts, saying, well, you're responsible for this and that new person. He's going to start tomorrow, and maybe remind you that you can easily improve the productivity of the new hire by doing a couple of things. And that is discussing their role and responsibilities on their first day, find a buddy to mentor your new hire, introduce your new hire to the rest of the team, checking in with your new hire a couple of times in the first couple of months, and encourage an open dialogue. And while doing that, they found that managers aren't, or it didn't work out if they forced managers to do this, but just mentioning it already made them aware of all these tasks, and boosted the productivity by up to 25%. So that was an interesting find. Another one I really like is the one from Amazon. Amazon spend a lot of money on creating a good onboarding, but they also noticed that data showed that a cultural fit is an essential element of a good onboarding. And it's found that colleagues are the #1 reason employees leave a company. So a bad relationship with a manager or a peer is a major reason for leaving. That being the case, it's critical that new hires fit with your company culture, or at least feel the fit and know what they need to fit into. So Amazon organized a 5-week course for new hires that they have to attend from start to end. And during that 5 weeks, they learn everything there is to know about the company culture and the company values. At the end of the course, new hires are offered $5,000 if they think there is no fit. They can leave the company immediately and get $5,000 on the bank account. So that's quite a motivator to leave if you're poor on cash. But Amazon said, well, believe it or not, there's only 1% of the new hires that is actually taking this money. And we're happy that they take it, because if they'd stayed, they'd probably cost us a lot more money on the long term. And actually, if you look at this global executive panel survey, you see that Amazon did it quite smartly, because a poor grasp of how the organization works is important, but also a misfit with the organizational culture is a very important element for leaving. So we think that's a very, very efficient method, but not a good method for all companies, because, well, it costs you cash on the short term. So now we talked a lot about what you get if you don't do onboarding well, but I think we also need to look at the positive side. What do you get if you do onboarding well? And one of the important elements is actual feedback. Reviewing the feedback of the onboarding gives you a lot of information of how your employees think about your organization, what they think goes well, what they think that don't go well, and that's very interesting, because they often have a very fresh look at the business. They haven't developed the tunnel vision that a lot of current employees have. So that's very, very valuable. Another one is you get shorter learning curves. So by pointing out what they can achieve on the long term, and what things they are going to cover at which point in time, actually decreases the learning curve. So companies that provide on-the-job training are giving new hires a life jacket. That's how we see it, and it's wishful thinking to simply give employees a manual on their first day while expecting them to jump to work the following day. That just doesn't work out. And last but not least, social integration. Well, it's also pointed out by the Netflix the Amazon model, that social integration is very important. It's #1 reason for leaving. So if you don't feel a match with the people around you or with the culture of the company, that's a lever. And by doing onboarding the right way, you'll actually be able to make sure that people will get integrated if you do the assignments in the right way. So a couple of steps to a great onboarding. It doesn't happen automatically. First of all, each new employee needs to fully understand their role that they've been hired for. That's essential. What are you here? What are you here for? And the onboarding process needs to give them a clear overview and understanding of exactly what they will be doing and how their work contributes to the overall business output. So what am I doing that helps the business that I work for in the long term? Here we have a couple of points, a few simple steps to start out with. Analyze the current situation and define your ideal situation. So what is the company doing today? Where do we want to be at in, let's say, 1 year from now? What will we adapt and where we'll work towards to? The second is identifying your stakeholders and think about a business case. Onboarding is not just HR, it's also maybe your CFO. If you can make a nice ROI while investing, that's always a win, and he will definitely be interested if you can save some money. Think like a marketeer, create a new hire persona. This is actually a very interesting one. So what is the person that you're actually creating this for? Is your company IT minded? Then you might want to take that into account. Are you a sales organization? Make sure you bring this to your people in the right way, because every person needs kind of a different approach. Number 4 is start with a generic program. We often get the request to customize it for all types of employees, millennials to maybe older employees, blue collar versus white collar employees. Our advice is to always start small and start generic. Customizing for different types of functions, ages is a second step, and is not as important as having a constructive overall program in place. And last but not least, remember to build in some feedback options. Like we said before, this is a major opportunity for learning, and it will help you to map the bottlenecks during the journey. Also, we advise you to not to wait, just start. Think big, but start small. It's very easy to make it a big project and well, include as much data and people as possible. But we think that even by improving the small steps, you can already make quite a big impact. And deliver the right content to the right person at the right moment in time to boost your productivity. Like I said before, you don't want to make this your main priority, but if you have the possibility, customize, for example, per region or per role. It's quite simple to have like a small manual, like, hey, you're going to start working in the Netherlands, learn something about the Dutch culture, you're going to live in Amsterdam, here are some interesting places to visit, and start with some data that you already have available within the organization. Even though your onboarding might not be perfect yet, it's very likely that you've hired maybe 2, 3, up to 100 people in the last couple of months. And having that data will actually help you to set out the most important bottlenecks. And usually it's already there. So just by asking people that have been hired recently could already be a great valuable source. And last but not least, don't think that experience is always big and expensive. We found that a simple thing like sending out an invite on LinkedIn just a week before somebody's first day can have a major impact. It makes you feel welcome. It makes you feel like, hey, somebody's thinking about my first day. So very small, and it takes just a minute of your time, but it creates a lot of impact. And the same thing accounts for example, flowers on your desk or a cool welcoming package. It's not expensive, but it has great impact. So how, for example, if we would do an onboarding, how would that look like and what would we advise you to do? So one thing that we think is very cool is automating the process of signing. And this could be compliance or your contract. It kind of depends on your IT setup and what would you like to achieve. But letting candidates sign digitally offers, we think, a lot of opportunities. They fill out their information once, and we can reuse that over time and bring that to the right systems. So you offer the new hire a very smooth process, and don't need to fill out their name 6 times in different forms, giving that a repetitive element that as mentioned before. So in our app, for example, once they log in, we immediately give them a checklist. That's the role clarification, the job clarification. What do you need to do, and at which point in time do you need to complete that? We think it's essential, and it brings a lot of value to the new hire, taking out all, or actually boosting confidence and knowing what they need to do and what are they being accounted for greatly helps. We also let them fill out their profile. So like I did on the right side, write something about yourself, show that to other new hires, boosting the socialization, allowing them to message, find each other on LinkedIn, creating that social network before day one and after day one. And as soon as they have created or completed these small steps, we start the learning process. So as you can see on the big image on the left, we give them a learning journey with a couple of topics they need to cover. Some are available from before day one, some are available as of day one, and some will be released over time as you get, as you're creating more progress and productivity within the company. But all of these content should be relevant at that moment in time. So don't start sending out everything a week before day one, because it will be overwhelming and information will not stick. Well, the second screen is also something we love, giving a virtual tour before day one. We did it in our own office in Amsterdam. We think it helps new hires if they can see the place before they actually get to the place. Maybe they've seen it from an interview, but maybe they've not. So letting people take a look helps in the familiarization. And on the right side, I included a feedback element. So letting people rate the things they do. Did I feel welcome? Was my manager nice to me? You should mention that's anonymous though. Did I feel welcome? Did I get a good impression of the culture? Did I get a good impression of my role? And these data elements seem very simple, but over time it will definitely help you improving the new hire experience. And as we move on, we create more and more content. We make things more complex over time. And that's kind of how we build the whole new hire experience. And combining these elements with things in real life, like a welcome day on the first day, can have a very powerful mix that we think is pretty cool. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. I do want to mention that if you want to have like more in-depth knowledge about our product, please reach out, because we will ask one of our guys to contact you and show you around. And for now, any questions, let's ask our friend Paul. Paul's here. Do we get any questions incoming? Yeah. Throughout the employee journey, pre-hiring, pre-boarding, onboarding, offboarding, which stage is most important for the employee? Well, for us, that's a bit hard to answer. We don't think there's one stage that is particularly important. I think they matter, all of them. It's just dependent on what you want to place the emphasis of. We think pre-boarding is for us, it's a sweet spot, because usually this person is still at home, he's super excited, and yeah, it's an easy way to bring across extra knowledge, but naturally all of them are equally important. Another question, Paul. Using best practices, how long does the usual employee onboarding take to reach near maximum productivity? This is also, it's very company dependent. So some companies spend up to a month, other companies spend up to 3 months. It kind of depends on the role, the amount of work. If you're blue collar, white collar, will you work with machines, or are you a knowledge worker? So yeah, lots of things come to play here. Last question. How do companies keep onboarding consistent if they have various geographic locations and business units? So what we tend to see, and that is if they use technology, so usually let's say the first day on the spot is naturally it's local. But in technology, with the use of technology, you can differentiate local content with international content. So we advise them to set up an overall process of 80% shared content globally, 20% locally. And by having some kind of matrix with tags in place, for example, you could deliver the right content to the right person while keeping it easy to maintain. All right, that's all for now. Like I mentioned, please reach out if you have any further questions. I know there's some more questions coming in. I will make sure your questions will get answered, so don't worry there. And thank you guys for joining today.